Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. We can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
Thanks for joining us today here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm Jim Waters. You're listening to this live on the radio, 970 WGTK. We're here each weekday at 11 o'clock. You can catch us on Channel 21 in Louisville, WBNA television at 12:30, 4 and 8 p.m. We thank you for making this part of your day today. And we are also very thankful to have in the studio with us today Davis Jaspers, the co-founder of Vitality, and Dr. Bill Perks. We had such a great program last time, guys. We wanted to come back and talk about this a little more. And Davis, your story is really important to this conversation, I think, especially for our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my start in weight loss by being overweight myself. And I was training to be a pastor. I come from 4 generations of Baptist pastors, and I've always wanted to be in the business of transforming lives. And then I tried counting calories to lose weight and exercising and doing all these things, and I would always gain my weight back. And then I finally worked with a naturopath doctor for 6 months to figure out how my metabolism is supposed to work. So it's a focus on metabolism, not weight loss. And once he finally created my program, I dropped 30 pounds in 40 days. And then I dropped out of seminary school. I started studying nutrition because that's the transformation that I wanted everybody else to experience. And then I contacted Dr. Perks because we found out about this bioscanning technology that could take what took me 6 months with thousands of dollars to figure out with this naturopath, we could now do with the bioscans in 17 minutes. So,
Dr. Bill Perks, the technology makes this possible.
The technology dials this in. So everybody's metabolism issue is so unique to themselves. There's so many factors that come into why somebody can't lose weight, why they can't burn fat, why they retain fat. And the technology allows us to dial that in, find out exactly what it is. Everybody's program is as unique as their fingerprint.
Yeah. Well, and you were the first guinea pig.
And I was the guinea pig. Yeah, when we got into this, somebody had to start it.
Yeah,
so I dove into it and did the bioscans on myself, and we had a unique program that I went through it in a 40-day stretch. I ended up losing 32 pounds.
You had to lose 2 pounds more than me, didn't you?
I had to.
You had to.
It's not that we're competitive.
Is this
or
the
anything.
downside of most weight loss programs? Is they don't treat each individual uniquely. A lot of times it's a one-size-fits-all
They don't.
approach.
If you go to an eye doctor, they don't just hand you a set of glasses. They actually do an exam and they find out what set of glasses, what prescription you need. And that's our approach as well. So we have a lot of husband and wives that do our program together. His products are his, hers are hers. They can't interchange them.
Yep. And sometimes like interchanging them would even be like the opposite of what we're trying to do because everybody's so special. So it's like, you don't want to mix them up. I think, you talk about uniqueness. I think the other thing is education. Like we are selling education. At the end of the day, if you want a good weight loss program, you're trying to figure out what are they selling. And we're selling education. So not only how to lose the weight, but then how do you keep it off the rest of your life?
That's the key, isn't it? That's where a lot of weight loss programs seem to fail. And I think folks can text Vitality to pound 250 to find out more and to really get on track here and become part of this.
So
Talk about that.
Dial pound 250 and hit call. And then you're going to be asked for a code word. Use the code word Vitality. We're going to text you a link. So these assessments typically cost $300, but we are doing them for only $47. So if you're interested in that, dial pound 250. Use the code word Vitality. You were talking ahead of the show. Go for it.
I'm going to say because of this time of the year,
Yeah.
we can give some gifts.
Okay.
Now we have some goals in the last 10 years. We're not new at this, by the way. We've been at this for 10 years. We've helped people over 60,000 pounds of body fat right here in Louisville.
Amazing.
Our goal is 100,000.
100,000 pounds.
Our goal is 100,000 by the end of 2028. Let's do it for free for the community this week.
Saturday.
This Saturday's
Okay.
event.
So tomorrow.
included. Yes.
Tomorrow. Okay. All right. So yeah. So money back. Because I didn't set up our funnels that way.
Okay.
Yeah, money back.
We'll just give it
at the
back
door.
to 'em when they show up.
$47 cost, typically $300. Tomorrow only.
Let's do it.
So you can scan the QR code on your screen. You can text your name 502-822-5644, or you can call pound 250 and use Vitality as the code word. You'll get a link to find out more. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Davis Jaspers, co-founder of Vitality, Dr. Bill Perks. Stay tuned for more Kentucky's Voice coming up with David Wall.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Well, thank you, Jim, and happy Friday to you, Kentucky. This is David Walls. I'm Executive Director of the Family Foundation of Kentucky, and you're listening to Kentucky's Voice, where faith, family, and freedom are always at the center of the conversation. I'm really excited to be your guest host today, and as we take a look at the cultural, legal, and spiritual crossroads of our state and nation, as we continue to seek to be people of faith and conviction and desire to respond with clarity and truth. I'm really excited. We've got a great program today. I'm going to be joined by two very special guests today. First, Josh Wood will be joining us here just in a few minutes. Josh is Executive Director of Them Before Us, an organization dedicated to ensuring that every child has a right to their mother and father. And I'm also excited in the second half of the program that my friend Lori Kirkendall, who is president of Beacon Health Education Resources, will be joining us. We'll be discussing the important work that their organizations do, important policy and legal implications of that, even some political implications of that for us here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and across the nation. But you know, as we begin today, I just have to, continue to reflect on the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk. I know it's all been on our minds in the last week. And I just continue to be incredibly encouraged by the outpouring that we're seeing of Christians and conservatives across this nation as they are mourning but reflecting on Charlie's life and legacy. I was honored last night to attend a vigil in Elizabethtown with my good friend, State Representative Josh Calloway. There were several hundred people there. And man, it was a revival as folks reflected on Charlie's life of Christian faith, of conservatism as promoting life and our common sense values. It was just an inspiring evening, and the gospel was proclaimed. There were several pastors that were there proclaiming the gospel, just as Charlie would frequently do in his program and interactions. And so I just want to say, as we all continue to reflect on what happened just about a week ago, let us continue to make our mark and leave our legacy, and to honor Charlie by doing what he did so well, proclaiming the gospel without apology, loving our families fiercely, and engaging the culture with truth and grace. seeking to be salt and light that we're called to be. There has been multiple vigils. I know they're happening across the country, but just here in Kentucky, there have been several just in the last few days. And I want to encourage folks. I know there's some continued upcoming ones tonight in Glasgow, Monday night at Morehead State University. I know next Thursday there'll be one at Bowling Green at WKU and also at EKU in Richmond. We are at the Family Foundation. If you go to our Facebook page, as we're finding out about these vigils, we're sharing them. We encourage folks to attend one. The mission and the heart of our organization is a Christian policy organization. We seek to stand for Kentucky families and the biblical values that make them strong. And we're going to continue to do that unapologetically. And that's why I'm ultimately so excited that Josh Wood is going to be joining our program here. Josh is actually going to be one of our featured speakers at our upcoming Kentucky Family Forum that is on Saturday, September 27th in Lexington, as we're going to be looking at important issues that impact family, that impact marriage, that impact life, with experts like Josh and many others, including Coach Joe Kennedy, who was the football coach who was fired for simply praying at a football game. And he has won a United States Supreme Court case that is continuing to reverberate across the country. So if you'd like to know more about that event, I invite you to join us. You can learn more at our website at kentuckyfamily.org. But Josh, I want to welcome Josh to the program. Josh, if our listeners may not be familiar with them before us and the great work that your organization is doing, share with our listeners just a little bit about the mission of Them Before Us.
Well, thanks, David. Them Before Us, real simply, it's a movement. We have a desire to advocate for a child's right to be raised, known, and loved by their mother and father. And we think that right should be protected, and we think that children could use a voice. And so whether it's legally fighting bad bills, trying to push legislators to pass good bills, or it's just in the media fighting bad ideas, putting out good ideas. And as a Christian, a lot of it is stuff we find in the gospel, but also we think it just reveals itself in nature. That, man, when a kid is raised by their married mother and father, all the data says they do so much better. And we don't even have to go down to the Bible. The statistics show kids, they flourish when they have access to those two people to whom, that we believe they have a right. So that's our mission in the courtrooms and in the media. We're trying to push to make sure that kids preserve their relationships with their parents. They have a right to be raised by them, and making sure that happens.
Yeah. I know. So the founder of your organization is Katie Faust, and Katie is just an incredible speaker, incredible witness for Christ, an incredible advocate. I know. Just share a little bit, Josh, if you would, about her story. And I'm going to mention something. We've shared this with our listeners and supporters before, but part of Katie's story is told in a powerful new documentary that was just released, called Truth Rising, that was produced by some of our friends at Focus on the Family and the Colson Center. And I know Katie is featured in that, and folks can go to truthrising.com and watch this powerful new documentary right now. But Josh, just share a little bit about Katie and her story that led to the organization being created.
Well, so many of us come from situations of family breakdown. We experienced it ourselves. Katie's parents got divorced when she was younger. Her mother repartnered with a woman, and Katie lived with them for a while. My parents got a divorce. Again, some of our other staff members have had similar experiences. The common thread with Katie's story, the founding of the organization, my story, is that we've all seen and experienced what happens when a child doesn't or isn't raised by their married mother and father. Some of us personally have experienced that. And we know that it's one thing for everyone in society to look at that situation and say, that's not ideal. We need to be guarding against that. We need to actually promote policies that incentivize families to stay together. But that's not where we are even as a culture. And that's why our organization needs to exist, is our culture shifted to the complete other side of the fence and said, no, we're going to actually celebrate, promote, and incentivize and call this progress when these things happen. And that's why our organization is needed, is because someone has to enter the public square and remind people that inclusion at the expense of children, creating motherless and fatherless children and placing them like they're a commodity into any arrangement we see fit is wrong. It's always been wrong. But our society has moved so far that those are the marks of progress. And so our organization was founded out of Obergefell decision, out of the gay marriage case, because we wanted to restore the rights to individual citizens and to be able to protect these families and protect these kids. And that decision took away so much of that. So that's kind of our origin story, was advocating for kids, because kids don't have the ability to do that themselves.
Yeah. You know, I like to say a lot, Josh, that the work that we do at the Family Foundation and so many of our allied family policy councils across the nation, the moment that we're in right now, the battle is over the hearts and minds of the next generation. The evil one, those seeking to indoctrinate the next generation, impact the next generation, are laser focused on adults, on the wants, the needs, the desires of adults, and so many times kids are left by the wayside. Obviously, this is fundamentally true at a fundamental level in the abortion context. But one of the things I've just appreciated so much about them before us is how they're really shifting the conversation around marriage and family and some of these other issues to put children back into the center of the conversation. Could you just share a little bit more about why, particularly for Christians, I would say, but really for anyone that cares about the next generation, why do we need to shift this conversation?
Well, why would any of these bad things be promoted as good? It's because there's a competing interest, and it's what adults want. And so at the end of the day, the child needs a voice because there are very loud adults who want specific things, and they need someone to sacrifice to make them possible. And oftentimes, too often in our culture, and this isn't even just a same-sex marriage issue, this is even in opposite-sex couples who get married, who decide after 20 years, hey, this isn't for me. They'll get a divorce in a low-conflict marriage and wreck the childhood of their children too. And so the reason that we even got started was because someone has to be the advocate for kids.
Yeah. Well, well said. And we look forward to continuing this important conversation and talking about the Obergefell decision in the upcoming segment. Stay tuned with us. We'll be back.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us on Kentucky's Voice. I'm David Walls. It's a pleasure to guest host, Executive Director of the Family Foundation. I'm excited that Josh Wood is still with us. Josh is the Executive Director of Them Before Us. And as we mentioned, Josh is going to be an upcoming keynote speaker, one of our featured speakers at our upcoming Kentucky Family Forum on Saturday, September 27th in Lexington. You can learn more at our website at kentuckyfamily.org. But as Josh, as you mentioned in the first segment, you mentioned Obergefell. That was the egregious Supreme Court decision. We just passed the 10-year anniversary that invented a so-called right to same-sex marriage, effectively invalidating, I think, upwards of 38 states, including here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where I like to remind folks, it was not that long ago that 75% of voters here in the Commonwealth went and supported the definition of marriage between a man and a woman. But it does seem like we're entering into a next phase in this conversation. We've seen some polling showing that support for same-sex marriage is starting to drop, particularly amongst Republicans. I'm a Southern Baptist, so I was encouraged to see the National Southern Baptist Convention, the largest coalition of evangelical churches in the United States, at their national convention earlier this year, had a very strong statement calling for the overturning of Obergefell. And I know this has been an important issue for your organization. And we mentioned the founder of your organization, Katie Faust. I recently saw a speech that she gave at NatCon, where she was essentially pointing out time and time again how what some of the impacts are of the Obergefell decision on children and families. And she's really done a great job. Your organization has done a great job in framing it in such a way that I think some of our listeners may not have heard or thought about the impact of a decision that seeks to ultimately redefine the most basic institution that God ordained. Can you talk to us a little bit about the impact and the harm from your perspective of the Obergefell decision 10 years later?
Well, thanks, David. And if you want to get on thembeforeus.substack.com, you can read the whole article, watch the speech for yourself. But I mean, these are not complicated things. As much as we can Supreme Court decisions, and it was so long ago, and it can seem overwhelming to even contemplate what would that look like. The argument is pretty clear and simple. We know from all the data that children, when raised by their married mother and father, do best in society. We are talking about lower incarceration rates, higher lifetime earnings, better scores in school. They're less likely to be in poverty. I mean, I could go down the list. Almost everything your government spends money on to help people down the line is connected back to whether they had a married mother and father. Now, we spend billions on that. David, you know that. Like, even through COVID, we spent billions trying to accommodate or to help people who were in trouble. And the people who needed the least amount of help were those who had married mothers and fathers. And that's regardless of race or zip code. So you mean to tell me, and people don't realize that this did this, the Obergefell decision took it out of the hands of states, whether they could say in law that they wanted to incentivize that type of relationship, that they wanted to recognize in law that that one relationship was best for kids, and try to find ways to make more people have that kind of relationship. You can now not do that. That is out of the hands of states. That is unconstitutional to do. And that, to me, is ludicrous. That's denying the data. And most of all, it harms children.
Yeah, you know, and that's incredibly well said, Josh. You know, one of the other interesting things in this conversation, and one of our team members, Martin Cothran, recently wrote a piece on this too. You know, we have heard during the Trump administration, the second Trump administration that we're now in over the last several months, that Trump and conservatives, Christian conservatives, are a threat to democracy. We continue to hear that, but I like to remind folks that again, what did the Supreme Court do in Obergefell? that decision was a direct threat to democracy. It literally undermined, as I mentioned earlier, 38 states, including here in Kentucky, where you had duly enacted constitutional amendments, state laws as it related to defining marriage between a man and a woman. But one of the things that I was so appreciative that your organization is pointing out, that it's not just the top level, definitional issues of marriage that have been impacted by the Obergefell decision. It's actually trickled down into some of the other policy discussions about a right of a child to know and have their mother and father simply be recognized in law. That's a foundational part of our law of the common law. But all that has been flipped upside down because of Obergefell. Josh, could you talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the law and policy sides of this that maybe folks haven't really thought about in terms of the Obergefell decision?
Yeah, so it's the basics are that when you redefine marriage, that it's between a man and a woman, and that union creates a child. You now redefine parenthood. You can no longer say parenthood is a mother and a father, because marriage is no longer a man and a woman. And so what has had to be created out of that in order to, and you can get into the text of the Supreme Court decision that said we are going to confer all the benefits of marriage to same-sex couples now. Well, one of those things was parentage. And we've seen that over and over again through the states. And so now you have you might remember the case, David, not too long ago, of the sexual predator who created a child and posted a video of them on social media. He had used a surrogate with his partner, and everyone just absolutely was up in arms saying this must be illegal. The police need to go get him. And they didn't realize that many states, in the wake of these decisions around gay marriage, went back and had to establish pathways to parentage that were, quote unquote, equal for same-sex couples. And in this case, they were able to create a child that they were not related to, and they did not have to go through any background checks, any screenings. No caseworker had to go home with them to check on the health of the child. Like, again, the rest of our society, anytime you take a child and you seek to adopt, you would go through a process. If you are not related to them, the state says what's in the best interest of the child, not what's in the best interest of the adult or the customer. It's a child-centric institution. Adoption always has been. We had to develop all these other institutions to create children in a way that did, quote unquote, discriminate against these same-sex couples. Because, David, if you've got children, when you took a child home from the hospital, they assumed you were the parent. You were assumed to be genetically related. You didn't have to go through any screenings. They wanted that same access, and this is what it resulted in. Again, someone who is on the sex offender registry, taking home an unrelated child, no background check. Again, we think that's wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've seen the policy battles, even, attempts to remove references of mother and father off of birth certificates in states, essentially removing in a legal context, the reality that the mother and father are the mother and father of their child. One of the other interesting things, Josh, and I know we've got just about a minute, is this concept that we have to champion that children deserve a mother and father. And one of the things that I really appreciated from Katie's speech that we referenced was she pointed out how that simple, factual, truthful claim has kind of been removed from our political discourse. And we're committed, and I'm so thankful that y'all are, to championing the rights of children to know their mother and father. As we come to a close of this segment, what can Christians do to speak boldly into this, to encourage our elected officials and leaders to take up this mantle of championing the rights of children?
Well, it won't be popular, because there is a certain group of people who want what they want at the expense of everybody else, including the least of these, which are children in our society. So I would say that the biggest thing is, especially when we know gospel truth, and we know from Christ himself saying, fear among everything else, those who cause a child to stumble will be the ones with the millstone around their neck. I think being encouraged that we got to fear God way more than we fear man. Absolutely
well said. Well, thank you, Josh, for joining us. We look forward to having you at our Family Forum. Stay tuned. We will be with Lori Kirkendall.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for staying with us. I'm David Walls, Executive Director of the Family Foundation of Kentucky, and your guest host today. I'm excited to welcome Lori Kirkendall to the program now. Lori is a friend, someone that I've had the opportunity to do some policy work with in the past. But Lori is the president of Beacon Health Education Resources. She has over 30 years experience in community health education, focusing on working with parents, schools, and churches and policymakers on Christian-focused sex education curriculum and policy, seeking to honor the Lord in this arena. And so I'm so thankful that she's going to be joining us here today. I'm thankful she'll be one of our other speakers at our upcoming Kentucky Family Forum on the 27th. But Lori, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, David. It's good to be here. Looking forward to being with you in Kentucky.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Lori, in your work that you do at Beacon Health Education Resources, you emphasize the importance of equipping both children and family with the important tools to make healthy, ultimately, we hope and pray, God-honoring choices. Could you talk more just about your work and what you do?
Sure. So, health education, I learned in my first course at Texas A&M University years ago, was really defined by a holistic view of physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual well-being, right? So, a whole person thriving and flourishing is what health education and really the field I've been a part of these years has been about. And what I came to learn also is that it aligns nicely with the biblical concept of shalom. Really, this idea of flourishing in God's good plan for his beloved people. And so part of that has been this idea of working upstream, prevention education, upstream of some of the culture's greatest issues and concern from injuries and illnesses, is kind of how we say that broadly, but especially around the issues of sexual health and divorce and abortion and abuse and pornography, and the list goes on, the kinds of societal ills, as I call them, that we are facing because of sex outside of God's good plan. So health education in that space it was about working upstream to proclaim the truth in a context of love and support, for God's good plan. And that does come down, first of all, to parents and the family unit first, and then goes out from there to churches and schools as well. So I do something sort of every day that's a little bit different with churches and schools on a local, national, and international level. Some of that is in curriculum advising, some of that is in public policy. So we can touch on all of those.
Yeah, well, I look forward to the conversation here today. Um, you mentioned family formation, marriage and family. Those are foundational creation order mandates that we have as image bearers. But there is so much debate, policy debate, political debate swirling around the issues that you're involved in each and every day: family formation, marriage, children, um, sexuality. As we think about these topics, what can we be? What should parents and churches um, know about this moment that we're in right now, as we all try to disciple the next generation, young people, to make God honoring choices with their relationships?
Well, our young people are growing up in a different world than we did as parents. My husband and I have four young adult children, so we've kind of come through some of the hardest years and are into a different kind of hard in the young adult years. But I also speak professionally out of this idea of culturally speaking. Young people are bombarded with lies, misinformation, pressure to go against God's design for identity, sex, marriage, and family. So, what we want to do is unite home first, and then church, and then schools. If we can unite those three, home, church, school, we have a fighting chance against the culture. So, we've all got to roll up our sleeves and take courage, and mostly in a context of compassionate relationship and connecting with our young people to bring this truth in a way that counters the culture's lies that are coming at them from every angle. We can do this. We've got the tools in the Bible and in well-proven resources and approaches to how to do this. We can do this, and as I like to say, we must do this. But families are at stake, not just the current family unit, but I think often in the family units that will come from the youth that are sitting in the middle school classroom today as well. So our future family formation as well.
Absolutely. I've got three kiddos, Lori, a little bit younger than yours, but man, they're growing up fast. And I just have to reflect. I think maybe one of the times that we interacted some was when I was still in Texas and working for the family policy ministry there that does similar work to the work that we do here at the Family Foundation now. I lived in Austin, Texas, and I've got to share this story because it sets up what I know, some of the lies that you do such a good job combating. When my son was in kindergarten, he was at in a public school in Austin, Texas, and the school district there attempted to move forward with a radical sex education, so-called comprehensive sex education program that was actually produced by Planned Parenthood. And I will tell you, Lori, I was already involved in a lot of cultural and policy battles, but that really opened up my eyes because they literally, Planned Parenthood's curriculum literally wanted to teach children, wanted to teach my child that their biological sex was, quote, assigned to them after birth by their doctor. I'll never forget reading that piece of curriculum and then asking a so-called expert from the school district, how could you possibly think that it is okay to teach my child, any child, an outright lie and tell them that their biological sex was not already determined at the moment of conception? And this person looked at me and said, this is what we're going to be teaching. And that's when I really connected the dots as it related to this battle over comprehensive sex education, that this was really just an evil ideology that was being promoted towards the hearts and minds of the next generation. Would you share just a little bit about comprehensive sex education, as the other side likes to say, and what is behind this approach and how it really does threaten our families and our children?
Sure. So Fundamentally, there are two different approaches to sex education. One is comprehensive sex education. I usually put that in quotation marks and say it's a so called comprehensive sex education. That is the terminology that has been used for several decades. That is fundamentally opposite of the sexual risk avoidance approach, or what I call the optimal health approach as well. And I'd like to distinguish those two. A lot of people misunderstand or assume comprehensive, sure, sounds good. Why wouldn't we want that? And yet, at their very basis, there is different, very different. So, comprehensive sex education is rights based. They also will say they are pleasure based. They are fundamentally based on the rights of children to enjoy full sexual expression and enjoyment, and often they use words around pleasure as well. So that's going to be very different. They assume children are sexual from birth, and their language is around that sex is a normal, appropriate part of adolescent development. Well, that's very different than what you and I think. It's very different than what sexual risk avoidance teaches, where you can hear in that language of risk avoidance, avoiding the risks of sexual activity. And the best way to do that is to delay sexual activity until marriage. What a good idea God had when he set it that direction, because we know sex outside of that plan is very costly across all of those dimensions of physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual health as well. So that's going to be a fundamental difference between comprehensive sex education and SRA, sexual risk avoidance. And I'd like everyone to kind of get used to that language in terms of policy and curriculum as well. Comprehensive sex ed gives a dual message. They will say abstinence is a good choice, but so also is condoms and contraception and consent. So condom, contraception, and consent, those C's get you the clearance for an appropriate, healthy decision about sex for adolescents as well. Whereas we're going to give a clear directive message that says saving sex for marriage is the best for your health. Sometimes they try to discredit our message as a religious message. And while certainly it can align with our religious values, we can absolutely stand on the health and medical information that supports sexual risk avoidance, the optimal health for all young people.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, gender ideology, sexual orientation, all of that is a part of comprehensive sex education. How they teach about normalizing contraception use is very different than the kinds of information we give young people about contraception and their effectiveness, but also their risks and side effects that can be there as well. So just total difference that should be aware of. As you said, Planned Parenthood is in the comprehensive sex education business, and for good reason. They want to win clients to their services. So if they can win the hearts and minds of our young people, they will go to Planned Parenthood for their birth control pills. We know they will eventually have failure in that regard and end up pregnant and need abortions as well. So we've got to counter the message of our opponents with an optimal health, sexual risk avoidance message.
Yeah, absolutely. I so appreciate you pointing out the connection with Planned Parenthood. I mentioned Planned Parenthood. A lot of folks, I think, just don't realize how important this is to their evil business model. And as you said, Lori, this is a part of getting children to engage in sexual activity. Because it creates future potential abortion clients when they do that. And then obviously they are now, one of the biggest organizations involved in the radical gender ideology movement and the gender transition movement. And I think we need to expose and let folks know when you see, a new curriculum that's being considered in your school, you really need to find out what organizations are behind it. And I think a lot of parents might still be surprised to know some of the organizations that are behind some of this curriculum. Well, we look forward to continuing the conversation with Lori in the next segment. Stay tuned with us.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial
Apologize, my lawnmowers are here. Can you hear them in the background?
Hold leaders accountable and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for staying with us. David Walls here again. I'm excited to be your guest host. I continue to just be so incredibly thankful for Kentucky's Voice and the platform that they provide for grassroots conservatives, for Christian conservatives across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I want to continue the conversation that we were having with Lori Kirkendall, but I want to turn to the federal level. And I continue to be incredibly thankful for the work that the Trump administration is doing, trying to combat and root out radical gender ideology and our taxpayer funding of it that we saw become so rampant during the Biden administration. And one of the noteworthy things that the Trump administration recently did was they put goodness, I think something like almost 46 states on notice, including Kentucky, including our Commonwealth here, that they needed to eliminate radical gender ideology from the personal responsibility and education program, sometimes referred to as PrEP. And we're incredibly thankful for that. They pointed out in a letter to our state some of the horrifying curriculum and content that was being promoted in our program. Obviously, this all follows the responsibility of our governor and his administration that we know continues to promote and push this harmful ideology on children. And so we have, at the Family Foundation, we actually have a call to action. If you go to our website at kentuckyfamily.org and go to our Take Action page, you can send a message to our governor and others in his administration, urging him to do exactly what the Trump administration is demanding in this letter, to say, we want to remove this radical gender ideology from these programs. Our tax dollars should not be paying for it. And it was not a part of the program that was authorized by Congress. But Lori, I know you were an expert as much as probably anyone in the country about some of these programs. Talk to us a little bit about this PrEP program and maybe how some of the federal programs interact in this arena, and why it's so important that we take a close eye on what these programs are being used for.
Sure, thank you. So there are several funding streams that come down from the federal level on teen pregnancy prevention. It's in the benefit to the benefit of the government to reduce teen pregnancy because of its burden as a public health concern and the cost to taxpayers and all of that to support teen pregnant and parenting teens. So there are several funding streams. Some of those come specifically for sexual risk avoidance programs. As we talked about, those are good dollars for good programs. And then there are other streams, the PrEP program, as you've referenced. Another one is just called TPP, Teen Pregnancy Prevention. Both of those have had policy notices now coming down from the federal government to align with President Trump's executive order that was brought forth in January, posted in January, to end radical indoctrination in K 12 schools around gender ideology. I love the language in that executive order about restoring biological integrity. That's what we want for our schools. So it's really been this cleanup across the federal agencies now where they're recognizing how many federal dollars are funding this radical indoctrination. So they're doing that through these funding streams, the specific programs of PrEP and TPP, that those programs are teen pregnancy prevention programs. They shouldn't be in the business of promoting gender ideology anyway. So the call from the government has been to clean up these programs and make sure they are focused on the right things in terms of reducing teen pregnancy, and also that they align with these executive orders and are not a part of the radical indoctrination in the school. So I'm glad it's bringing a lot to light. Not all programs in schools are funded by TPP or PrEP dollars, but many of them are. So the call to action is great, and I would expand it a little bit farther to say everyone should know what's being taught in their schools. We've got local control in place, which means local school districts choose their own curriculum. And we want to make sure that they make those choices that are in line with those directives as well, and with our family values as well. So yeah, get involved and find out what's being taught and put that pressure to align with these executive orders.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your reminder and your call to action that as parents, as citizens, as local taxpayers, we need to know what's being taught in our local schools. Lori, you have been involved in a lot of those local and state level policy battles. We have been involved in some here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky as well, including helping support legislation that was a part of Senate Bill 150 back in 2023 to ensure that radical gender ideology is not taught in our schools, and that parents actually have the ability, when it comes to human sexuality, to opt in as opposed to just having a right to be noticed or a right to opt out. Could you talk a little bit about some of the policy battles that you may have been involved in across the country, and what are some good policies at the state and local level that we should be looking at?
Well, let's start with opt in. That's a good one that you all have in place with about 5 other states as well. We just had it reenacted here in Texas as well. Opt in puts the power over what young people receive in sex education in the hands of parents, where it should be. It requires active written parental consent for any teaching of human sexuality to their young people. So that's a good policy that I hope, in light of all that's being talked about now from the Supreme Court decision around opt out, I want us to keep marching towards opt in, and I'm glad that you all have as well. The other important policy factor is looking at state education standards. So when you look at state and curriculum, because of the 10th Amendment, all curriculum for education happens at the state level. There are no federal standards. There is a publication called the National Sex Education Standards, which is not national. It's never been ratified by any governing any governing entity. But watch out for it, because in the local school districts, some parents will come and say, "We want the National Sex Education Standards." Well, education standards happen at the state level. So you want to watch what's being taught as kind of the foundation, the floor level of expected teaching in the health standards, And then those health standards should be supported by the laws as well. So we look at standards and laws. Standards usually held through the Department of Education, and then laws would be coming through the legislative initiatives and the statutory requirements. So we're looking at all of that to make sure we're clear on what should be taught and what should not be taught. We want sexual risk avoidance and optimal health. We don't want comprehensive sex education. So we know what's really best for the young people. And some of that starts honestly with looking at the health needs that are going on in the state. And unfortunately, with the push for comprehensive sex education, sexually transmitted diseases are worse than they have been, and we want to look at that. The most common one right now is congenital or newborn syphilis, which is just the harsh reality of where we get if we are not clear in a sexual risk avoidance message, helping young people avoid sexual activity. So, getting informed, I think that policymakers need informed on the health issues, that these aren't just discredited as religious issues, that they really affect the short and long-term health of young people.
Yeah. Well, and Lori, I want to shift our focus out a little bit, because there's another interesting, I say interesting, very concerning trend that we're starting to see talked about a lot more. Even a recent study that was just kind of opened, I think, a lot of folks' eyes. And it is dealing with the fact that birth rates and marriage rates are going down tremendously, which is obviously tragic. It has huge implications here in the United States, and I would say, across the West and across the world. This recent NBC study that was recently came out showed some interesting stats that say that in 18 to 29-year-olds, amongst young men, the desire to have marriage and to have children was actually very high, maybe even number one. But amongst young women, it was at the bottom of the list. I can't help but reflect. We talked a little bit about earlier in the program about Charlie Kirk and his legacy, and I'm just so thankful for the powerful witness and voice he was of the beautiful reality that one of the best ways you can leave a legacy and make an impact is to get married, to have children, and to disciple your kids and pass on your faith down the line. But what does it say about the culture that we're living in right now to see marriage and birth rates falling so precipitously?
I'm so glad you brought this up because it is a concern that a lot of people are not aware of, although I think it's starting to get a little more traction and attention, that we have so prioritized career and academic pursuits that we've missed prioritizing family, marriage, and family pursuits as well. I think it starts with what we're modeling in terms of helping young people aspire to marriage and family. Are we modeling it in a way that makes it attractive that they would want to have a marriage and a family? Or have we so debunked it? Oh, the ball and chain of marriage and kids are just took my life away, sucking everything out of me, all of this, like we've made it so negative, and yet it's a beautiful gift from the Lord. Our culture has so devalued marriage and family. We've devalued women. And so that women are trying to make this comeback in terms of power and, and I can do everything you can do, and some of that in a way to think of it. But I think we have to make sure that as parents for our young people, we're giving them a beautiful example of marriage and family that would be desirable. And then we have to be about thinking through their goals and objectives, not just prioritizing sports and academics, but we've got to be thinking about how does family fit into your short and long-term goals as well? And have we addressed this idea that if you wait too long, fertility goes down, and that's why delaying marriage and delaying parenthood, which decreases fertility, and there's a whole lot of complicated equations in there. But my hope is that we can help young people aspire to have good marriages and strong families.
Amen. Amen. Well, I want to say, Lori, I'm incredibly thankful for the work that you do. And I'm incredibly thankful for that you're going to be joining us here on Saturday, 27th at our Kentucky Family Forum. Thank you for joining us. That's all for today's program on Kentucky's Voice. Again, a big thank you to Lori and Josh Wood for joining us. Folks, the battle for faith, family, and freedom isn't just happening in Washington, D.C. It's happening right now in our communities, in our schools, in our churches, in our communities. Be engaged, be the salt and light you're called to be.